For more on this, Professor Peter Kuznick is joining us live from Washington, D.C. Professor Kuznick is History and Director of the Nuclear Studies Institute at American University. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Professor Kuznick. Now, Russia is all set to build a small nuclear power plant in Uzbekistan, a first such plant in Central Asia. Talk to us about the significance of the project and how perhaps it will further increase Russia's influence in the region.
Globally now, we see a trend toward building more and more nuclear energy. Most people believe that that is relatively safe and much more environmentally friendly. Russia and China have both been expanding the number of nuclear facilities that they're building around the world. So on the one hand, this is in that context. But it's also part of the competition with the U.S. in Central Asia. The United States has tried to make more and more inroads through trade in that region, but the Russians are showing that they can match them technologically and is not ready to relinquish influence in that region. So on the one hand, you can see it in that context. In the broader nuclear context now, we've got a very alarming trend taking place, and that's this game of nuclear chicken that's occurring. On the battlefield, Ukraine is losing more and more ground as Russia is gaining. And that is making many of the NATO countries feel quite desperate right now. We've got two kinds of threats going on. On the one hand, we've got Macron and others calling for sending NATO troops into Ukraine, both as trainers and in combat in certain circumstances. And then on top of that, we've got the Cameron and Blinken and Stoltenberg and the Poles and the Estonians saying that the Ukrainians should be allowed to use Western weapons to hit inside of Russia.
Yes.
Now that is very dangerous, because Putin's response is these tactical nuclear weapons drills on Ukraine's border. So we see nuclear escalation going on both sides in this nuclear chicken game that could lead to World War III. So we're at a very alarming moment. The positive use of nuclear energy and nuclear power that we're seeing right now in Uzbekistan is one thing, but the threatened use of nuclear weapons in Ukraine or more broadly is much more alarming to me right now.
Right, Professor Kuznick, Uzbekistan has tripled uranium exports to the European Union in the past year. The question being that will Russia's move impact Uzbekistan's uranium export to Europe?
Russia will be actually selling more and more oil and gas to Uzbekistan, which previously have been exporting oil and gas. Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan have both said that they need nuclear power, that their oil and gas supplies should not be exported. They need them internally, but they also need nuclear power to meet their demand. And Russia is in a prime position. Rosatom, the Russian nuclear agency, has been exporting a lot of nuclear power. So they're in a very strong position technologically, economically, politically, to carry this out right now.
Peter, do you feel the sanctions that the West imposed on Russia have drawn Russia to improve more foreign ties more aggressively? And what kind of response do you feel we can expect from the West after the recent announcement?
The West's ability to hurt Russia with sanctions has proven to be surprisingly limited. Russia has been opening up trade with the East, orienting away from the West. And so now they've got increased trade, as you know, with India, with China, with Eastern Europe, with Africa, with other Asian countries. So Russia has its own strategy, which has been working, whereas countries like Britain and Germany are showing signs of economic decline, Russia is actually showing signs of economic growth. So Russia has not been hurt, but in the long run, this has not been positive for Russia's economy. What Russia's done is been building up its military-industrial complex. Well, that can work in the short run, but in the long run, it's not producing the kinds of goods that people need to raise their standard of living. And so in the long run, this will not be beneficial for Russia. But in the short run, it has been working.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much for sharing all your insights, sir. There was a lot of insight and some foresight as well from Peter Kuznick, who joined us from Washington. Always a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you.